Welcome back. Our project has dried overnight and we're ready to continue on it. And this will be the fun part, the rabbit. So I just wanted to tell you that after this dried, I did strengthen the gesso a little bit under where the rabbit was going to go. Now in the PDF that you have, there's the drawing of the rabbit. And what you need to do to transfer it is to trace it on a piece of tracing paper and then turn it over, and with your pencil just scribble over the lines. And this is basically like making your own graphite paper, but isolated on the lines you want to transfer. Then you turn it back over, set it down, put it in place where you want it, tape it down so it's not moving all over when you are transferring it. And then you go over all the lines with either a stylus. This is a stylus, has two different thicknesses of ends on it, or you can use a ballpoint pen, but you just go over the lines and it transfers that graphite onto the piece. So after you make a line, I would lift this up and make sure that it's dark enough but not too dark. So just go over your whole rabbit and you transfer the drawing. And now we're going to turn to our colored pencil work. So you also have in your PDF the color swatches from my pencils. And as I said, these are a different variety, a different company, different brand than what you may have, but you should be able to match the colors fairly closely. And let me show you one that I did that's done. So the colored pencil can cover quite well. And it's a nice, slow and easy process. I don't want to say it's hard to make a mistake because one can always make mistakes, but pencil's pretty forgiving. And the other thing about it is that it's transparent. So as you're laying colors on top of each other, you're building color. So I'm going to start with this yellow ochre, and I'm going to go over all of the rabbit with a few exceptions. So the ears, and I'm going to stop talking now, and because I'll speed this up and voice over. I said I was going to go over the entire rabbit with a few exceptions with this yellow ochre, and the few exceptions are the areas where the rabbit or the hare has white fur. So I work light to dark. I'm starting with my lightest brown rabbit fur color, which is the yellow ochre, and going over everything that's going to be brown fur. And what I'm doing is, with successive layers, I'm working in smaller and smaller areas. So the yellow ochre that I'm putting on now is going to end up being the only color in the highlight areas of the rabbit, like on the top of the forehead. So after this layer, we're going to work with successively darker colors and build up the color in the shadow area. You may have noticed that some of those transfer lines, particularly the one at the back of the head at the base of the ear there, got really dark. And that's because the colored pencil that I put over it tended to smear the graphite. Oh, by the way, here I am in the chest. The chest is not white, but it's a very light yellow ochre. So I'm putting lighter pressure on the pencil in that area. And just with graphite pencil, with colored pencils, the harder you push on the pencil, the more intense the color. So now I'm switching to the eyes and using chrome yellow for the pupils, and then I'm going to use my 0.7 millimeter black Posca paint pen to paint in the pupils and some lines around the eyes. But of course I'm going to avoid the iris. And in the pupil, I'm trying to leave a white dot of the paper for the highlight. I often like to start or put the eye in fairly early in the process because I feel like at that point, the rabbit and I, or the subject and I, have sight of each other. And so she can kind of say, yes, I like that. No, I don't like that. Communicate back and forth with her. So that seems maybe kind of silly, but that's the way I feel about it. So now I'm switching to the next darkest color, which is the brown ochre. And I am going over the areas that are the lightest color and anything that's not the highlight of the brown fur. And the nose of the hare has deeper color on the center. You can see that or maybe you can see it, the line for the nostrils. I'm leaving a little patch of white between that brown and the line of the nostrils because there is that kind of marking on the nose of the hare. And as you work, of course, refer to the video. And by the way, I did not slow it or I didn't speed it up very much because I want you to be able to see really well what I'm doing with each of these colors. But in addition to looking at the video, you can refer to source photos of hares. And the first source photo that I would suggest would be the photo of the finished project that I have in the PDF for you. But also, you might be interested in going on the internet and finding pictures of hares that might give you a little more information. And, it's always good to work with as much information as you can get. So please, if you're inclined, go ahead and do that. So just continue to work with it. One interesting skill with any piece of art, but especially with this, is to look at two things at the same time. So look at the stroke you're putting down, but also what effect or what change it makes in the whole. Now I'm on the next darkest color, which I believe is burnt sienna, and limiting myself to the medium to darker shadow areas. Because like I say, we're building up color, going from light to dark. Shadow under the eye, more depth on the nose. When you look at your source photos, you can see where the darker and where the lighter areas are. And you're just mimicking that with your colored pencil. The deepest darks are going to be along the right side and under the chin. And under the chin, towards the back of the neck, there's another fold of fur. So there's a shadow under that as well. And then even though the back is in the light, the back is dark fur. So I'm working that area darker with the burnt sienna. Now to walnut brown. And I don't remember whether I said, but the tips of the hare's ears are very dark. So every single color we're putting on, down to the darkest, is going to go on the tips of those ears. And it's going at the base of that rear ear to set it behind the forehead. The inner ear is also darker at the tip, and that's what I'm working on now. And some pink. The hare's ears are very light. Very thin. And in the light, you will see a pinkish color because the light's shining through and hitting those blood vessels. So I'm brightening that up. And now more dark. And there's a reminder to me to say that you certainly don't have to work with your piece straight up all the time. If it's easier for you to turn it and work it that way, then please do. So I'm working the dark a little higher up on the face because that piece behind or between the eyes is not really in the highlighted area. It's sloping downwards. So it's darker than the top of the head. And now as I put the shadow under that rough part, so there's the delineation between the head and the neck, but also there's that little poof of fur. And I put the dark underneath, leaving a little bit of light at the edge to make that form pop out. Just constantly working more and more with the dark to create form by creating shadows, and also to indicate the different depth of color in the different areas of the animal. There's a little poof around the tip of the muzzle, so putting shadows behind it and under it helps form that piece. Sometimes I use blue for shadows, but also sometimes I use brown, which is what I'm doing here. A little shadow on the upper eyelid. And a little shadow between the chest and the side of the rabbit, since he or she is turned a little bit. Now I'm putting more burnt sienna down on that fur, just because the color of the fur is deeper there. The other thing you'll see on the hare's fur on its back is little dark splotches, so it's not an even color. It's kind of speckled, and so here I'm adding those dark bits. And I'm strengthening the color on the chest. Even though the chest is very light, I'm going back with the yellow ochre because it's going to be darker the lower it gets on the chest. It's just a constant process of evaluating your piece and deciding what more you need and adding it. The one thing I didn't say about colored pencil yet is that, kind of like watercolor, it's transparent, and so once it's down, you really can't take it back up. But what you can do is go very slowly and you work in a small area at a time, and just keep evaluating where you are and deciding where you want to go with your piece. So now I'm using a gray. Sometimes I will use, or often, I will use blue as a shadow on the white parts, but in this case, I'm also using some gray. And I'm going back to the dark brown and drawing in those lines around the nose and down to the mouth. This is actually a white pencil, and I'm thinking it might brighten those white areas a little bit, so I put it in. More dark, the tips of the ears. So now the tip of the ears and the base of that ear probably has 5 or 6 layers on it, whereas the forehead just beneath the ear has only one, the initial layer of yellow ochre. More darkness on the tips, more shadow. So with all this work from light to dark, she's becoming a three-dimensional creature, not just our flat yellow ochre rabbit or hare that we started with. By the way, there are some fascinating differences between hares and rabbits. And if you're interested, just Google them and you'll see what they are. My preference is for hares. Now I'm seeing that I need to separate the forehead from that ear, so I'm putting a darker color at the base. Or, yeah, at the base, on the head at the base of the ear. And here I'm putting some blue shadows over the white. Now the blue shadows really have a brightening effect on the piece overall, which is kind of neat. And using the white pencil to brighten a little bit that white over the eye. Using the dark pencil to show the separation in those hairs on the front inside of the ears. Adding more warmth with the pink. And now I'm just cleaning up those lines in the eye. I forgot to put the other eye in. So it's just a little sliver of black, deepening the nostril. And I'm adding a darker brown shadow to the upper edges of the iris because the eyelid sticks out over the eyeball and forms a shadow there. Strengthening the shadow areas of the ear. I just keep going. I look, I evaluate what I see, and I do what I think I need to do, and then do it all over again until I'm finally happy with it overall. And you can see at this point we really are getting a good depth of color. And that's partially thanks to the gesso underneath it. So that area looks a little light to me. Go back to the yellow ochre, the lightest color, and deepen that a little bit. Okay, now to add some outlining. Now with outlining, generally speaking, I don't like to use one solid swoopy line. I like to break it up in little pieces that almost like a dotted line or a dashed line. I think it's more natural. And while I'm working with my dark pen, I darken the tip of the ear even more. So doesn't that ear stand out now? We're working with value, and all colors have an innate value. Yellow is a very light value color. No matter how hard you press on the pencil or how many layers of yellow paint you put down on your paper, it's only going to go so dark. And other colors are inherently darker. But those you can make light with colored pencil by not putting much pressure on the pencil. So I felt I needed to separate the forehead even more from the back ear, and I did that with that outline. The nice thing about outlining with dash lines is you don't have to be nervous about making a perfectly smooth and beautiful curved line. That's not what you're going to see on these animals anyway. I'm also using this pen to deepen some of those spots or speckles on the back. At the end, or towards the end, you get down to smaller and smaller details. So you're looking more closely at each little piece and asking yourself, is there something more I can or should do in this area to make the overall piece better? She's looking pretty good though. However, I need to deepen that inner ear. You know, on a toy stuffed rabbit, the ear is like this flap, this flat flap. But ears actually on the animals, just like on us, they attach to our heads in a C shape. So they have kind of a semicircular form to them and a deepness inside the ear. Now I got my white Posca pen out, and I'm just adding the final brightest, whitest details, the hairs on the inside of the ear, some work around the eye. Just looking for more opportunities to make it better. And finally, the whiskers. So from this point on, it's just fuss, 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 fuss. Keep working it. Keep evaluating. Go as far as you want to. It's not always true that the further you go, the better it gets. You just need to be the judge of that. But one thing that was really important, I felt, was to put some highlights on the white fur on the chest, or the light fur on the chest. And so that's what I did. Okay, there we go. Created a pretty rabbit, or a handsome rabbit, depending on whether he's your boy or your girl. And we're going to leave it at that for now and come back later and finish up the embellishments. So I hope you enjoyed that. I had fun. Okay, so I'll see you next time.